On this episode, we talked to Kirk Vander Molen and Vicki Conn on how churches can increase their impact by pursuing unity. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Church Leadership Lab, the podcast dedicated to empowering healthy churches. We're excited to bring you another conversation today. Hopefully that will encourage you, challenge you, help you grow in leading your church, and ultimately help your church grow in health. Now, before we jump to the conversation, as I often do, would love to invite you to share this with somebody if you find it helpful. Now, you can leave a comment on YouTube. You can leave a review on Apple Podcasts. You can subscribe. You can share this just sending a link to someone. But any way that you might share it, we appreciate. The reason being is it helps us get these conversations into more church leaders' ears and hopefully help impact more churches. Now, today we sit down with Kirk Vander Molen, the National Executive Director of Love, Inc., and Vicki Conn, the Executive Director of Love, Inc. in Greater Holmes County. Now, Kirk has been part of the Love, Inc. movement since 2002. He first served as the Executive Director for the Love, Inc. of Northwest Allegan County, Michigan, before joining the Love, Inc. National Office, where he now serves as the Executive Director. Kirk has a PhD in interdisciplinary health sciences from Western Michigan University, with a research focus on religious problem-solving styles in the context of experiencing poverty. He holds master's degrees in divinity and social work as well. Now, Vicki began her journey with the Love, Inc. movement in 2007 in Erie County, Pennsylvania. From there, she moved to Central Ohio, serving as vision carrier to bring Love, Inc. to her local community. She's been serving as the executive director since Love, Inc. of Greater Holmes County opened 10 years ago. She is a Love, Inc. national trainer to affiliates and a lead trainer through the partnership of Love, Inc. and the Chalmers Center for Faith and Finance and Work Life Facilitators. Through her 22 years of experience doing ministry alongside her husband, as he serves as pastor, with over 15 years of experience with Love, Inc., she has grown to understand and cherish the unity found in the body of Christ. That's what we dive into on this conversation, is talking about what does it look like for churches to unify and come together in order to impact the communities that they're a part of, and how practically that unity can actually help increase that impact exponentially. So it was such a great conversation with Vicki and Kirk, and I'm excited to bring that to you now. Well, Vicki, Kirk, thanks so much for coming on the Church Leadership Lab podcast. Excited for our conversation today. Thanks for being here.
You bet.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Now, we start with this question on every episode, and so I'm going to ask it for both of you. So we'll have Kirk go first, and then Vicki. What's something that doesn't make the public bio that all your friends, all your family would know about you? Kirk, you can kick us off.
Well, probably that in the winter time, I am an avid wood burning stove guy. And I love that warmth of the heat, and I'm chopping wood, splitting wood, and that's my jam in the winter. In the summer, I love being out. I had this really small sailboat, maybe a 1 or 2 person sailboat. And every time that I get to be out on the lake in that sailboat is just it's so relaxing to me, and I love it.
Yeah, wood burning stoves are amazing. I especially in the winter. That's a cozy situation right there. I love that. Vicki, what about you?
Oh, so for me, I know that my family and friends know this about me, but I love to travel in any part of the world. And so my husband and I, this summer is our 30th wedding anniversary. Wow. And so that's something I would love to put in a bio as well. And we were able to travel to Switzerland and France and the Cotswolds and England. And so just that's a big part of my heart and my love, is seeing God's world across the world. So I love it.
Well, congratulations. First of all, in 30 years, that's amazing. And yeah, it sounds like you guys got to see some pretty amazing places in celebration. That's awesome.
Yes.
Well, we're going to jump in, and I love that our conversation is going to talk about what does it look like for churches to come together to impact their communities. And I know that that's a lot of what you all do at Love Inc. is helping facilitate that and helping churches to do that, to see that kingdom impact. So I'd love if we could start just kind of digging into what are some of the ingredients for success when it comes to churches unifying to better serve their community.
I think ingredients of success, Scott, is it might sound like a Sunday school answer, but prayer. Unity of the body of Christ in the community is something that doesn't happen unless the Spirit of the Lord is active and sought for that to happen. It's a challenge sometimes to get churches to get to know each other, get to respect each other, trust each other. We believe at Love Inc. that there's a capital C church in every community that just so happens to meet in different locations on a Sunday morning. That's the heart of what is a key ingredient for churches in the community. And that unity doesn't mean uniformity. Churches can be exactly who they are, but also work with other churches to have this greater presentation to the community that is showing and sharing the love of Christ.
Vicki, would love to hear your thoughts on what you've seen, especially kind of as you're on the ground in the midst of it, doing this work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think just to kind of feed off of what you said, it's important that each church sees themselves as part of the broader church and the body of Christ, and with a posture and a perspective of humility, and just that, as they come together, it's not about comparing what this church is doing or in competition. It's about finding the niche that each church has. And what does God have for that church in this community as he pieces all the churches together? God knows each congregation. He knows each body within each church. And, everybody has a part in the broader church. And so I just love to see kind of each church step into their call and their place in a community that fits so beautifully together as the family of God.
Yeah. Vicki, I'd love to follow up on that and ask then, like, how, if a church wants to dive into figuring that out and growing in understanding, one, certainly a posture of humility, but also this is who we are, what God's called us to do, how we can serve. How can they start to do that, especially if it's maybe something that they haven't done before, but want to start moving in that direction?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the opportunity we've had here at Love Inc. in our community is just sometimes it's introducing the churches to each other. There's sometimes a general natural collaboration for those maybe that are coming to a ministerial group together. But I love being able to introduce whether it's pastors to each other or even people in the pews, and just in introducing them to each other, which creates a relationship across those church lines. Yeah. And I love when our volunteers, they share about working or serving together with people, not just within their church, but across the churches. And that really then starts this natural just way of doing and serving the community together. So there's just that introduction to one another.
Yeah, that relationship piece is so important, because especially when we don't have that, sometimes we can see people as, as the other, as, kind of separated, as you can sometimes create narratives in your head as well. Well, I've heard this about this church or that, and then, but all of that kind of dissipates when there can be that relational connection. And then it's really cool, the ministry that can kind of happen from there, for sure. Now, for church leaders listening to this who are in their community, but they're not really partnering, wanting to grow in that. So wanting to grow in partnerships and to find either a Love Inc. or like-minded churches to serve with, how can they kind of take those first steps? Kirk, I'd love if you could kind of kick us off here and your thoughts on some of those steps churches could take.
Yeah, well, I think first steps, and this is picking up on relationships and how vitally important relationships are, not only between churches, but within the community. So I would encourage, at least an initial approach for pastors to, as Vicki said, get to know each other, and one pastor taking initiative to have a luncheon and just become familiar with each other, build some relational trust, and I think another initial step is also becoming aware of community needs and opportunities, and that can just be asking questions around the community, tapping into congregation members who are out in the community in their work and a variety of different settings, and that could really be informative to what they can do. I think talking about it from the pulpit and in leadership meetings, say, how can we be meaningful to show and share the love of Christ in our community, and just begin to posit that idea. And we don't believe that we should be doing this alone. I think it's unfair and unreasonable to think that one church can be all things to all people in the community. It needs a greater church body to do that. Certainly if there's a Love Inc. in your community, if I'm talking to pastors right now, look them up, because this is what they want to do. They want to help you engage in your community. And if you don't have a Love Inc. in your community, look us up. We'd love to help you start one. And it's really important to know that Love Inc. isn't really geared up to be anything other than what the churches want it to be in the community. We're not designed to be a ministry in and of ourselves, but a partnership of churches in the community. So we can be seen as like an outreach pastor for all churches in the community to help engage the body for service.
Yeah, I love that, and I've actually have experience with Love Inc. There's one where I am, and my church has jumped in different serving partnership opportunities, and I think that's a great analogy too, because not everyone has the ability to have an outreach pastor, somebody focused on that role. So to have people to say, hey, what can we do? Where can we serve? We have limited time, but we want to make an impact for the kingdom. I think that's a great analogy. Vicki, I'm curious, how have you helped as churches kind of make that call, or go to take the first step? What's that process like for them in going from we're not doing anything right now to now we're able to serve in a really meaningful way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's just that conversation to get to know them as a church too, to see, what skills and gifts do they have in their congregation. There are such a wide variety of characteristics found in churches. You have small number of people in their church to these, larger churches. You have financial capacity that looks different. You have skills and talents within congregations. They all look different. So the joy is finding out what is within the church and how can that connect and, go along with your neighbor church or the church down the road. And so I've loved in our community, if I could just share a quick example, maybe is easier than to just talk about it. So an example of this would be, there was one Thursday night a month, there was one church's facility hosting a meal for the community. So everybody can come. It was about fellowship and relationship. And along with that, they invited a couple of other churches to help serve a meal, and they would kind of take turns. Today, there is a meal served every Thursday evening, and that came out of just these partnerships within the churches, across the churches, where they were saying, hey, what if our church and your church comes together and we host a meal on this Thursday night? And so every Thursday evening in the community, there's a place to go that's hosted by churches, and it's a collaboration of churches. And so I keep going back to, it's just a start of a conversation. It's that relationship that I have seen these pastors and these churches build, that now the community is just seeing as, wow, they're not so bad after all.
Yeah. I'm curious if we could kind of double down on that topic, because one of the things I wanted to ask is, so we've talked a little bit from the church perspective, right? How do you grow in unity, partnerships, in actually making that impact? But I'm curious what you've seen from the community's viewpoint, in how have you seen that unity impact how churches are perceived and received by the people in the community that they're actually trying to impact. Yeah, would love to hear both of you kind of share maybe what you've seen, and maybe some encouragement too, because I know that it can be a challenge as you're leading a church to help people see the reality of what you're there for, and not maybe draw kind of a false narrative. So Kirk, do you want to start just in sharing your thoughts on that?
Sure. Love Inc. plays sort of a centering role in which we help represent the needs and opportunities in the community to churches, and the relationships and resources of churches to help meet those needs and opportunities. So in terms of the question of churches' impact and how they're perceived as engaged in their community. They're perceived as caring in their community. It's proactive when churches work together to do that. So I think there's really a fair expectation that people should have in the community, that the churches are there to help when they are in a time of need. Yeah. So people are right to look to the church, and the church does right when it responds well. And so sometimes, very positively, what happens then in other social service agencies or other nonprofits, education, health department, government, it begins to look like when they're trying to solve a problem or meet a need, they go to the church because they have come to know that churches collaboratively working together is a very powerful and meaningful resource to the community, not just in materials, but in relationships.
Vicki, what have you seen on the ground with the way that the churches sort of changed their perception in the community?
Mm-hmm. So I would start by saying our Love Inc. has been here for 10 years. And when we first started, my heart, and I felt like the vision that God was giving was that Love Inc. was here also for the church. Yes, for the church to serve the families, but we're here for the church. And so part of a Love Inc. experience is the training that we can offer. And so it's shifting that perspective of handouts. So like it's shifting that perspective of the church is there to pay your bill for you, to now 10 years later, I see families engaging in relationships. We keep talking about relationships. But I feel like people in the community that we serve and get to walk with, and like Kirk said, people in the community through community agencies and other government agencies, they're beginning to see that the church is more than just paying the bill for people, that we are here to walk long term. Like that's part of Love Inc.'s heart too, is to just transform like long term. They're not quick fixes. We're not just here to pay your bill and be done, or to meet this particular need and be done. We're here to walk with you. It's a journey. And so I believe that our community has seen that be lived out over the last 10 years, and they find us to be trustworthy then to maybe take a budgeting class or sit with a budget coach, or, some of these longer term ways of just walking with people. So I think the shift in how the community sees the church is moving in that direction, which is exciting.
Yeah.
So we have a back to school store that we're kind of starting up here. And we have 60 volunteers from over 20 churches who are ready to go on August 3rd. And the families are invited to come and shop. It's not, here's your backpack, go have a great school year. It's they're coming in, and all of these church volunteers are engaging with the family, and they get to pick out their backpacks, they get to pick out their supplies, and we offer a suggestion of $5 per student. So it's the parents who are buying their children what they need for the school year. It's the dignity that they have in doing that.
Yeah.
So again, that training for us as volunteers in the churches is to speak value and worth and purpose into families' lives, and it's just really making a difference.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, on that note, I think one of the things that really helps motivate us is stories. I think they inspire us. I think they give us a vision and a hope for what could be. So I'd love to hear, if you do have any that come to mind, stories about what happens when churches start to work together and ultimately the impact that they can make. Kirk, feel free to kick us off on this one.
Yeah. Well, I would say that collaboration doesn't happen without coordination. And so that's one of the key components of any community that's looking for churches to work together. So this is an example of collaboration through coordination. So a woman goes to a church and gets in contact with the pastor there at one of our affiliate partner churches, and explains that her car has an issue. I think it was with her bumper that made it unsafe, and she wasn't able to drive and get to work and her needs, and she didn't have money to pay for that repair. So she approached this church and this pastor. This pastor didn't quite know what to do with it, at least from his own at that moment in his day and his specific church. But because his church belonged to the Love Inc. Church network, he made a call with that person to Love Inc. And Love Inc. kind of took over, and it's an administrative role in caring and hearing about needs and trying to resource people in their needs. So this particular person met with one of our Love Inc. volunteers, and they heard her story and explained it. And they then talked about it as volunteers and Love Inc. staff. And one of them remembered about 4 weeks earlier that a volunteer had said, "Hey, I'm a mechanic. If you ever have anyone who has a need, let me know." And they're like, so that's the cool thing about churches working together, that you have a variety of gifts within churches. Those gifts just need to be known and connected. So they knew who this person was. They called him, and he said, "Yeah, I'd be happy to take a look at it." Meanwhile, they contacted another church to partner up with providing some money for the parts. And then because this person for a period of time did not have transportation, and we always want to try to engage and talk with people about meeting longer term goals and just an immediate need, that volunteer invited this person to come to our transformational programming with classes and mentoring. And knowing that she didn't have a car, she called a member of another church to then provide transportation to our transformational ministry programming. She loved it. She loved being there, the camaraderie with the people there, the care that she received, the content that she was receiving in terms of classes, and she wanted to come back again. So that transportation kept on continuing. And then when she got her car fixed, she kept coming to the program and now volunteers with the program. So it's just connection of meeting a short-term need and connecting it with long-term care. And it's just one example, a very basic example, but that's what we're about. basic practical help and connecting that to a long-term story.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Vicki, anything come to mind in just the stories of impact?
Oh, there's so many. I never asked you how long this podcast was supposed to be, but
Hey,
but no,
keep going.
I'll share one that maybe, okay, so this one lady called our Love Inc. affiliate, and actually before she called, the pastor of her church, so this was somebody who was attending a local church, and the pastor had talked with us ahead of time, and that church recognized that while she was a part of their congregation, that their congregation and their church was not going to be able to meet every single need that she has or to walk with her in every single way that she needs to. So first of all, that's humble. That's humility right there. That's a church saying, hey, we need the body of Christ here. It's our church. And so as a pastor's wife, like, the pastor being able to say, look, we need extra support with this situation. And so he was able to kind of give us that heads up, and we were able to talk with her and her family. And again, across the probably at least a year, we were working with their church and recognizing what they were involved in. And then she was in need of housing. And so we were able to have her be a part of our Homes of Hope affordable housing, which is also run by local churches and volunteers. And so she and her family lived in that home. There were furniture teams from another church that came and, loaded up her furniture and delivered it to the Homes of Hope home. There was another church who had a Gap ministry that has cleaning supplies and things, and gave her a welcome basket, into the home. She also met with a coach and took Fresh Start classes that was going to be helpful to her. And then as she was able to move into her own home, we had the volunteers be able to help her with that. There was a furniture ministry that's run by multiple churches that we were able to piece together the furniture that she was kind of filling in the gaps of what she had. Also kitchen supplies. There's a whole other church over here that does kitchen supplies. And so she was just surrounded by all of these different churches and her own church. And that's just everybody saying, hey, we've got a part to play and walk with her in this way. Yeah.
That's beautiful. It's amazing what the church can do, right? When we unify, when we come together, and when there's a shared desire ultimately to see the kingdom continue to spread, the kingdom make a tremendous impact. Now, one of the things that really this podcast is geared for is church leaders and helping empower healthy churches. Ultimately, we want to see not just the church kind of exist, but be really healthy and thrive. And so one of the things that we ask every guest on this podcast is, in your opinion, what's one essential component of a healthy church? So Vicki, will you kick us off on this one?
I mean, I have, maybe they're too simple. Maybe it's too simple for me, but for one, a healthy church has to be just clearly focused on the gospel of Jesus Christ, just a Jesus-centered church, and staying firm in that. And then I just feel like a healthy church is one who can love God with all of who they are and love each other with all of who they are. That's my simple answer to that very big question.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Kirk, what about you?
Yeah, I love the simple and clear answer, Vicki. I think an essential component to a healthy church is honestly outreach, providing meaningful opportunities for people to put their faith in action. Our mission statement is to mobilize local churches to transform lives and communities in the name of Christ. That transformation goes both ways. When members of a church are actively engaged in doing what our Savior Jesus calls us to do, being in situations and providing concerned care and compassion, all the things that Jesus exemplified when he was walking here on this earth. When when people of faith begin to do the things that Jesus did himself and have that heart, have those eyes, have those ears, they begin to be transformed in and of themselves. They, I believe, are drawn closer to the heart of Christ. And anytime that we're drawn closer to the heart of Christ, and multiple members of one church are being further and closer drawn to Christ's heart, that's going to be a healthy church. And I think putting our faith in action is really a vital component of a healthy church.
Well said. I so appreciate you both sharing. Now, would you just give listeners some next steps they can take if they were interested in finding Love Inc. in their area, maybe seeing if it is around, how they can partner, just some of those next steps that they can take?
So anyone can call Vicki at Greater Holmes County in Ohio, and Vicki would love to talk to them, right, Vicki? I know you would.
Absolutely.
Because you're an incredible ambassador for our mission.
I would.
And so really go to loveinc.org. All the ministry model and opportunities and ways to connect. You can find, there's a map that you can search for a Love Inc. that's closest to you. And there's a variety of buttons that you can click and get more information. We'd love to join with anyone who's listening to this podcast and has an interest in what we're talking about to help explore some initial steps that could make this reality in your community.
Well, thank you both. Now, we're not quite finished yet. We have a last section that we call our final five. These are more rapid fire. They come at you quick. So we're just going to start here and start with the first one. Vicki, I'll start with you. What is one book that you'd recommend to church leaders?
Well, outside of the Bible.
Yep, that one's in there. That was a given. After, lower on the list.
One book that just came to my mind is When Helping Hurts. And so I just think that's a real, good perspective shifter.
Yeah. Kirk, what about you?
I would say Redemptive Compassion, or Compassion with the Redemptive Power by actually Lois Tupy was a former executive director of one of our affiliates. And it really captures the heart of that, the compassionate care in a community that churches can work together. Similar to When Helping Hurts, and Toxic Charity and books within that kind of genre, all are good. And those really kind of hit a reading list that we would encourage.
All right. What is the last thing that you listen to, whether it's Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you kind of listen to music? Kirk, you can kick us off on this one.
Well, I did a lot of cleaning and work around the house on Saturday. And so I just requested Saturday cleaning music as a search. I use Amazon. So that was my search, and it came up with a great playlist and motivated me through my day. There
you go. I love it. Vicki, what about you?
So I'm on the song Holy Forever right now. Yep. I have a playlist that I listen to, but I keep going back to Holy Forever.
Great
kind
song.
of my go-to song right now.
Love it. What is your favorite piece of technology or software? Now, the only caveat on this one is we do rule out your phone, because this phone's crazy. So, Vicki, what is yours?
I love Canva. I could get lost hours and hours in Canva.
It's awesome. Kirk, what about you?
Hey, I just found this. It's not necessarily a single piece of technology, but we use the Google Suite for our national office. And I found a way in which to have your PDF links be dynamically connected with a Google Doc, so that any changes you make in your Google Doc will automatically be changed in the PDF link that you've given to someone. Game changer for me.
Wow.
Very minute technology piece, but and I'm more excited about the things that I just recently discovered. So I discovered that last week.
Yeah, that is super helpful. Actually, I'm glad that you shared that, because now I know that as well.
Yeah, let me know and I can give you the instructions.
Yeah, yeah. What is a quote or piece of advice that has stuck with you over the years? Kirk, you can lead off this one.
Okay, it's kind of a funny one, and I'm not sure how profound. But don't always believe what you think.
Hmm.
Sometimes we can get stinking thinking in our brains. We can go on a tangent of attributing, why people said things, or just become closed-minded in not observing or hearing other perspectives. And so, I think a Bible passage that with that goes, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And then in all your ways submit to Him and He'll make your path straight. But I just think it's a humble stance. I don't always do it well, but it's like there's maybe some other thoughts that you should be thinking or considering as you're making a
Yeah.
decision or trying to solve a problem or something at work or whatever. So don't always believe what you think.
Yeah. It's good. Vicki?
All right, this is going to be deep. Not really. A motto or something that a phrase for me is laugh or go crazy. There you have it.
Very wise. Both of those are simple but wise, and I appreciate them. All right, last one. What is one thing that you'd like to communicate to our audience of church leaders? Vicki, I'll have you go first.
Yeah. Oh, I have a heart for church leaders because, again, my husband's a pastor and I get it. So something is take time to be still. Take time to personally sit with Jesus and be strengthened. Surround yourself with spirit-filled encouragers and accountability people in your life. Just know that you're not alone, and the weight is not yours to carry. Jesus carries it. And so be still and sit with Jesus.
Yeah, very good. Kirk?
So something that I would expect that all church leaders would know, but our God is an immeasurably more God. He can do more than we ask or imagine and believe. So wherever anyone might be in their situation, I think about Jesus and feeding the 5,000. The disciples just wanted to send everyone away, but God said no. And He just said, give me what you got, and I'll do incredible things with it.
Yeah.
I'll do more than you can imagine with what you have. But so part of that is an invitation for partnership, and part of it is an invitation for relinquishing all of our own thoughts about we have to do everything completely. Leave room for God to work in your situations.
Yeah. Well said. And so appreciate you guys sharing and the work that you're doing. Kirk on a national level, Vicki on the ground, and just knowing that it's making a tremendous impact on a ton of people, certainly, but ultimately on the kingdom of God and the church. And that's such a gift. And so we're thankful for you and appreciate your time today. And we're thankful for those of you listening or watching this, for being with us. We hope that it's encouraged you. We hope that it's helpful. We hope that it, again, helps empower healthy churches. That's really what we want to see happen. And so if that is the case, we would love for you to share this. So whether you send it to a friend, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, if you subscribe, leave comments on YouTube, all of that stuff is so helpful for us to get these conversations into more people's ears. So we would appreciate that. And we will see you next time as we continue to have more and more conversations that help empower healthy churches.
This episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast is brought to you by Ministry Brands, the largest provider of church technology software. Over 90,000 churches rely on Ministry Brands for their single platform solution that brings together all the digital tools a church needs. From online giving to websites to church management software and more, Ministry Brands is leading the way in simple to use, innovative solutions, all with the goal of empowering healthy churches. To learn more, visit ministrybrands.com.